Welcome back to 10-Minute Manager. Today we are going to go over performance and behavior management techniques. First, as a manager, you need to discuss your expectations because osmosis is completely ineffective with human beings. How will they know what your expectations are if you don't discuss them? I stress that these expectations should be put in writing. I stress that these expectations should be put in writing and then reviewed in person or perhaps via Zoom if they are a remote employee. But it should be a one-on-one conversation in writing. Why? Because if it's not in writing, it didn't happen. Ask yourself some of these questions. Do you motivate people through fear or satisfaction? Are you transparent? Do you discuss the elephant in the room? Is it private or public? It depends on the circumstances. Do you hold people accountable by driving them away from something, such as job loss, or towards something, such as an attaboy, a pat on the back, a reward, or a simple thank you? Do you empower people to take action, allow for mistakes, let's face it, we all make them, and discuss lessons learned? Hopefully, you're saying, yes, I definitely am treating my employees well, and I have an accountability culture, including holding myself accountable. Creating an accountability culture also involves creating smart or smarter goals. And these goals should also include the expected behavior or the core values of your team or organization, as well as clear expectations of work performed. In a previous session, we mentioned SMART goals. Here you could see that the world has changed this to smarter goals, which means you need to evaluate and then review. Basically, start all over. It's a continuous loop. Let's talk about performance feedback. There has been a huge shift in approach from just the hour-long, once-a-year annual feedback session to ongoing conversations. It turns out human beings want to talk about their performance more than once a year. And let's face it, don't you think that just makes sense? Why wait till once a year to tell an employee that they're doing a bad job? You should be telling them that as soon as it is discovered, fixing it, and helping them get over any issues or mistakes that they have. Annual reviews are just too late, and they're usually a monologue where you're talking at them rather than a two-way dialogue. They're also usually very formal and stifled discussion. Now, does this mean you're going to completely get rid of the annual review? Not necessarily. You may still have a formal annual review, but there's not going to be a surprise by anyone involved or what's in the annual review because you've been talking about it all year long. One option is to have a 15-minute conversation once a month, once a quarter, once a week, or as needed. This could just be you and the employee in your office or somewhere in a relatively private area having a conversation over a cup of coffee. Another technique is what I call the sandwich technique. So we all know the bread's really good, even though it's not that great for you, but it tastes good. So you make the sandwich. You start with the good, you focus on the bad, which if there's a problem, that's all the filling in the middle of the sandwich, and then you end with the good. Hey, you've been here for a long time. Things have always gone quite well. However, what happened yesterday can't happen again. This is what I'm going to do to help you. And then you end with the good. I really feel like we're going to get through this. Do you have any questions? So this leaves the person thinking, okay, I just kind of got in trouble, but I'm not getting fired, so I'm not going to go look for a new job. But it also helps them leave that conversation with dignity and hope that they're going to be able to overcome whatever just happened. Here are some other options for if you are struggling with what do I talk to somebody about every month or every week or every quarter, whichever one you decide. So you can do a climate review to measure their job satisfaction and morale. That could be your 15-minute conversation. The next time you meet, you can talk about strengths and talents. You can help them develop their innate strengths and abilities by possibly helping them figure out what training programs they want to take. You can talk to them about opportunities for growth to help improve their performance and standards. Here are the career paths in our organization. Which one would you like to be on? The next conversation you could have is about learning and development. So this might not be something that is anytime soon, but maybe over the next, 12 to 18 months, these are some opportunities for you to grow your skills to be used here or elsewhere in life. And then another conversation you might want to have is about innovation and continuous improvement. The purpose of this is continue the employees and your team's effectiveness in line with the business need. Sometimes we're in the rat race so much that we don't really understand higher ups' business needs. And so this could help them understand that and meet the overall company's goals. Of course, we also have a SWOT. So you can draw out your employees' strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And then you could ask them to do the same, and then you could compare and you can work on this together to say, okay, this is why I don't think you're great for this type of position, but I really think you're great for this other type of position. What do you think? It's an awkward conversation to have, but once it's out on the table, you're both on the same page, and your employee suddenly understands why you're making decisions about their career that you haven't shared with them before. And then this is one of the easiest, just a check-in. It could be a 15-minute conversation. Hey, Johnny, what's going well? What's not going well? What can I help you with? What I found out with this conversation is the first time you have it, it could be awkward and lengthy. Be cognizant of your perceptions when you're having these conversations, especially when you're doing rated reviews. There's something called a contrast effect where you are comparing ex-employee to others, and the others happen to be more favorable employees, and so you're comparing the employee that you're talking to one of your favorites, and you give them a lower score. There's also another thing called halo effect, where they do one thing well, and therefore you think everything's well, and that's not always the case. So sometimes it's best to get other people's opinions as well. I just got to make sure those people are trained at giving feedback. And then the final thing that I see a lot is the recency effect. They were having a bad year where they did one thing very well and now they get a great review. Oh, by the way, it happens to be right before they review. So this is another reason why I really encourage doing year-long reviews, not just once a year, because you can just pull out that paperwork and look at it and rehash it with the employee, and then that helps give the explanation of why you're giving X review or X raise. Documentation is just so very important. In real estate, everybody says location, location, location. In HR, we say documentation, documentation, documentation. Why? Because if you fire somebody and you have no documentation and they file a lawsuit or unemployment, they're going to win because you have nothing written down. And let's take away the lawsuits and the unemployment. What I find is if it's not written down, it didn't happen. It may go in one ear and out the other just because your communication is off. So you can do verbal warnings or notices. What I like to do is if I'm having a conversation with an employee, have that verbal conversation with them, and then I just jot it down in an email based on what we just talked about, blah, 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 and then you give them a deadline. Ta-da, the email is now documentation. You can use this for coaching. You can use this for counseling. Written documentation is taken much more seriously. If you have some kind of counseling that has a warning system, for example, or a performance improvement plan, it absolutely must be in writing in a formal document, not just an email. Because again, the more formal the documentation is, the more serious it is taken, not only by the employee, but by the courts as well. To wrap things up here, I want to say, just remember that we're all human and we deserve dignity. We all deserve fair treatment, even if we're a bad employee. But this also means equal accountability. So you need to be looking around the room and making sure you're treating everybody fairly, and you're also giving everybody the same accountability, no matter what the excuse is, whether it's Family Medical and Leave Act, a family situation, health situation. That doesn't make it right to treat one person. It doesn't make it right to let somebody off the hook many more times than you've let somebody else off the hook. The third item here is business involves relationships with other human beings. So even if you're an introvert, you have to figure out a way to have relationships with other human beings so that they are comfortable coming to you when there is a problem. The organization has goals that must be met. That's why we're out all here. If they don't understand those goals, how are they going to help you achieve them? And finally, accountability starts with you, the manager.